My mother, she would not stop telling her friends about, my son is a chef, my son is a chef. Whereas, it was a complete opposite when I wanted to become a chef. She would say, oh, are you sure? Are you sure? Always asking me.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. As we've discussed before, migration patterns have been a key factor for our culinary landscape. Australia has also welcomed many refugees who have built new lives down under. What's it like to be part of a refugee program and build a new life in Australia and become part of the vibrant hospitality sector too? Brian Cole is the chef de cuisine of Hearth Restaurant at the Ritz-Carlton in Perth. Brian, how are you?
I'm well, Anthony. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to get you on the show. How are things over there in Perth at the moment?
Pretty good, actually. Not too crazy busy, but still enough to keep the blood boiling.
You're at Hearth Restaurant, part of the Ritz-Carlton. Tell us a little bit about the restaurant.
Hearth's concept is all about open fire cooking. We use a lot of smoke, char, fire, anything that has anything to do with fire. We incorporate that into many of our dishes. It's a very, very modern Australian contemporary style cuisine, using a lot of native ingredients and a lot of following the seasons as well of the native calendar as well. So yeah, it's really nice. I enjoy working there.
Well, it's spring at the moment. What's some of the native ingredients that are appearing on the menu at the moment, and how are you using them?
So currently we've got some of the quandongs on sunrise limes on the menu. Last season we saw some beautiful desert limes as well. Also we're using a lot of bush basil and some of the native macadamias as well. So yeah, those are currently on the menu.
What's it like utilising these ingredients? Is it something new to you, or is it something that you're quite familiar with now?
Yes, they're quite new to me. I never used them as much until I started working at Hearth. I sort of used the common ingredients like wattle seeds and things like that. But working at Hearth has sort of opened up a lot more options of what native ingredients are available to me, yeah.
Tell us about one or two of the dishes that you have and how the native ingredients work with the dish.
Sure. So with our shark bait cuttlefish dish, we've served that with some spring peas and then the broth made with all roasted vegetables and some hondashi. The native ingredient component is that we use red back ginger, which has just a mild ginger flavor, but a very sort of peppery undertones as well. So we add that to the dish just to add a bit more of a sort of like a kick to enhance the whole dish, and that's just simply seasoned with some marin oil as well. So
that sounds amazing. I want to get into what you're doing in detail a little bit further on. You and your family were part of a refugee program to Australia. Take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up and what was it like?
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Sierra Leone. For those who don't know where Sierra Leone is, it's in West Africa. It was sort of, I explain it in a way of, if you've ever seen the movie The Blood Diamonds, that's where I'm from. So growing up in Sierra Leone, I don't really remember as much as growing up in Ghana. We left and fled from the war when I was 3 years old, and then moved to Guinea, and then again moved to Ghana. So I don't really remember as much as when I was a kid, but sort of been told and explained to sort of things come back, and you tend to sort of pick out a few things that happened. Yeah.
What sort of role did food play? I know you had to move a lot. Your family had to move a lot. Is there any food stories of that journey while you were moving that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of food is a huge part in our family. Sort of brings everyone together. Every Sunday after church, we'd all gather around. All the communities gather around everyone bringing a plate of their own from the different homes, and we'd all sit together and sort of, enjoy each other's company. Also, just general, just a way to survive. Just trying to create something out of nothing was quite a lot of those times as well. Struggling in Africa, we didn't really have much, so just to make do with what we got.
Were there any dishes that you remember from your mother or grandmother that you can share with us?
Yeah. So my grandmother used to make this tomato stew with boiled eggs, and that was always my favorite. It was just very simply sort of like onions, garlic, just tomatoes, just cooked down for hours, and then just as it's about to be served, it just fall through some boiled eggs, and then just simply serve with some white rice. That was always my favorite, and I've always enjoyed that, and I've tried many times to replicate it, but it never tastes the same as hers.
You migrated to Australia in the early 2000s. Tell us about that period of time and the challenges of making that happen.
So at the time we wanted to migrate. It was around 2001. So I remember watching on TV the World Trade Center going down. So everything sort of, all the process that we had worked for to come to Australia everything was put on a hold because of, what that happening. So it took a little bit longer than we anticipated to get to Australia because everything around that, the flights and everything is like that was sort of just halted. I personally, I didn't have any sort of knowledge of what was happening. I was very young. So just asking, when are we going? When are we going? When are we going? Obviously, Mom's getting frustrated, telling me, we just need to just be patient, just be patient, just be patient. And then finally in 2004, we finally got, cleared and then came to Australia then.
What was that like when you got to Australia?
It was a huge, huge shock. At the time as well, we didn't know what Australia was. We didn't know where it was. We were hoping to go to America because that's pretty much everyone's sort of dream in Africa is to go to America in the refugee program. We filed and sort of requested to go to America, but obviously it's a lucky draw. Some of my family members went to Norway and Sweden and things like that. Again, not knowing where those places were. But coming to Australia was very, eye-opening. Everything I've seen was through American movies. So coming to Australia was completely different, It was a huge flip thinking, it's going to be, all the shiny McDonald's and on the streets, seeing all of those movies with the, like the African American movies, in the streets and the ghettos and things like that, expecting sort of something similar, but we didn't get that. So living, when we first arrived, it was very different to what we anticipated, but we loved it nonetheless. And then over time, slowly, we just thought, wait, this is actually a little bit better than America. It's not like the movies made it out to be. But yeah, we really sort of embraced the culture here and just sort of, just started to integrate straight away and just get on with it, basically, yeah.
When did you start to become interested in food and think of it as a potential career?
Well, I've always sort of been interested in food, helping my mom and grandma in the kitchen. Just not really focused as a career because it's not really glamorized in Africa to be a chef. My mother actually wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer. And my grandfather, who's a pastor, also wanted me to be a pastor. So those were the sort of career paths that I thought I would have ended up in. But when I came to Australia, I did really well in high school in a cookery class. And the principal actually sat me down and said, you're doing well in this subject. Maybe you should consider doing something in this path. So she helped me get an apprenticeship. A work placement at the casino, and sort of that led into me viewing cooking as a career path. Sort of the different style of hospitality there, and the different style of cuisine, and sort of not limited by just sort of just cooking or the home cooking that I'm used to. A more commercialized style of cooking as well. So that's what really got me into it, is just wanting to create sort of unique things myself. But that sort of helps, like, teach me the different styles of cuisine and to view it as a career path.
Do you have any stories of what it was like when you first started working in commercial kitchens?
Yeah, as well. It was at that time, so in 2008, 2009, it was very different to what it is currently. Starting I was 16 at the time. So going into the commercial kitchen at 16, where everyone is sort of, that's their career, and everyone is at that age where they're just focused and just ready to work. And coming in as a 16-year-old kid, you're still not sure what you're doing there, but you just know that this is what you want to do, just the discipline, everyone just doing the work because they enjoy it rather than just as a survival method was beautiful to see. It was nice, and you could sort of just take on board all these different things that everyone was doing. Say, wow, I liked what he's done there. Oh, that's really nice. I like that. So it's just sort of, as a kid, to be shaped by the commercial kitchen and the industry was actually, was really good to me, because that taught me discipline. It taught me commitment and patience and all of that. It was very hard to navigate as a kid, but it was still sort of nice to be molded in that career.
As you started to build your career, who were the really important people, and what were the really important venues for you as you did that?
Yeah, so when I did my apprenticeship, I was at the casino for 7.5, 8 years, working in all the different restaurants. But the one chef that really sort of took me to that next level was Robert Ryan, who I worked with at the Merriwell. He was an American chef. He had done many openings and then ended up opening the Merriwell. But he sort of sat me down, and then he spoke to me and said, if you want this as a career, there's just a few things that you're going to need to work on, sort of break it down for me, and really explained the reasons why this is working, why this is not working, and how to improve. He probably had the biggest impact in my life, not just as a chef, but sort of as a, it's weird to say, but sort of as a man. So he had that huge impact on me to sort of guide me into manhood, basically. Yeah.
After that sort of period of time, you mentioned the casino. Where else have you worked, and do you have any stories of what it was like for you?
Yeah. So after the casino, I sort of moved around, working in casual work in Subi Hotel, working at Coma the Treasury. I ended up helping a friend open a restaurant in a food shopping centre. So we did an Italian cuisine and sort of just more traditional style Italian, opened a restaurant there, and then took some time to study as well, just sort of trying to build myself and sort of my brand, and then finally getting a position in Hearth.
Tell us a little bit about creating sort of your voice on the plate. Tell us a bit about your food and how you landed on sort of, what you do.
So my food or my style of cuisine is just a combination of, people that I admire and sort of people that I look forward to and sort of incorporate in my own like West African techniques to it. But it's still based around, the French, modern French style. I knew when I went to London and sort of on a holiday, ate at some of the Michelin star restaurants, trying Heston's restaurant for the first time. And I just knew, okay, fine dining is definitely what I wanted to do. Yeah. So just being there and thinking, looking at the service and all of that, it's like, wow, this is something that I would like to pursue. So that sort of helped shape and direct me in that path, having a more refined take on food, but also keeping it as fun as possible as well.
You mentioned including West African techniques. Tell us a little bit about how your heritage and those techniques sort of weave through your food with some examples.
Yeah. So a lot of West African techniques using a lot of preserves and preserving food, a lot of salt in ingredients and things like that, and also a lot of stews and sauces. So I like to make really delicious and good sauces because I think that's sort of the fundamental of a dish is how good the sauce is. And I always like to just spend a lot of time, making sure that the sauce is as good as it can get, and that just enhances all the dishes. So in West African cuisine, it's all about the sauce, all about the stews and things like that, slow cooking, braising, things like that. So that's the style that I tend to follow because those kind of things just work. If you have a really delicious sauce, any protein or any sort of seafood just sort of gets enhanced as well.
I'm interested to know about this salting as well. Is there one that you can take us through and tell us about how the salting works with a dish?
Yeah, so in Hearth we do quite a lot of curing, just dry curing, for a couple of days, leaving things to just sort of really dry out and then using it sparingly on a dish just to sort of as seasonings rather than using the salt itself. So curing a lot of fish, and then we can use that to sort of season another dish, or any things like using dried meat to sort of dry it out and then to sort of shave on top of other different dishes and things like that. So that's where the really deep salting comes, using a salted item to season rather than just using the salt as well. So it just enhances the flavor and the texture of a dish as well.
Is there a West African sauce that you can tell us about that's really influential on what you do?
Not quite, because a lot of my food in Sierra Leone is sort of very difficult to sort of replicate in a commercial kitchen. To sort of do in a massive production, sort of just the home style cooking. It just doesn't taste the same because the quantities aren't quite right. But there is a lot of sort of stews and braising that I use the techniques instead of the sauce itself. But always my favorite has always been like a simple roasted garlic and onion stew, which is sort of similar to the one my grandmother makes with the tomatoes. But that one, I've sort of used that as sort of a base for all or most of my sauces. Just roasted garlic, onions, and olive oil, sweat down, lots of pepper, and then just really, really cook that down until it's nice and caramelized, and then use that as sort of a base for a lot of sauces and seasonings as well. So,
tell us a little bit about the food of Sierra Leone, and is there a dish that really exemplifies the food?
Yeah, so in Sierra Leone, the one sort of dish that is our like national sort of dish is cassava leaf. Cassava is also known as yuca, which is it's a root vegetable, but the leaves we use to cook and make a stew as well. So that's sort of my favorite dish in Sierra Leone cooking. I really, really love that dish, and I would like to sort of replicate that in a restaurant, but it's very difficult to get a hold of cassava leaves in Australia. Um, but my mum somehow she finds it and always makes it. We tend to do it in different styles with either palm oil or coconut oil. Sort of depending if you're cooking it with meat, you use palm oil. If you're cooking it with seafood or fish, you'd use coconut oil. And also jollof rice. So jollof rice is it's a tomato based stew, and then you add your rice into that, and then you can season it with whatever items you want. Sometimes we put red kidney beans in there, black eyed beans, and things like that. But jollof rice and cassava leaf stews are probably the two main dishes in Sierra Leone that you sort of eat and know where you are and what you're eating as well.
Your food sounds fascinating with the influence of West African techniques. It's a modern Australian restaurant. You're using native ingredients as well. Is it hard to strike a balance with all of these things going on?
Yeah, at first it was. It sort of took some time to sort of just realize the similarities in native ingredients and West African ingredients. So sort of it just became about substituting ingredients instead of just adding things to it. So like the native yolk in WA here, we can sort of pickle it and use it as that, and it's the same as using the cassava. So the similarities in the ingredients have sort of helped meld everything together instead of just sort of adding anything. So just substituting a native ingredient for something that works in a West African dish or in a French cooking has sort of just helped shape the dishes as well. It was difficult at the start, yes, but over time, sort of working with the ingredients a lot more, you tend to find out what works and what doesn't. At times, you can substitute an ingredient, but it has a completely different sort of feel to the dish than if you were to substitute with something that is completely not similar, but get a sort of more uniform sort of taste to the dish rather than just substituting everything.
You mentioned a little earlier that your family wanted you to become a doctor or something not in food. How does your family feel about the success that you're having as a chef now?
Oh, absolutely. Super, super proud, especially my mother. She would not stop telling her friends about my son is a my son is a chef. My son is a chef. Whereas, it was a complete opposite when I wanted to become a chef. She would sort of say, "Oh, are you sure? Are you sure?" Always asking me. There's not much happening in as a chef. Because I didn't think at that time it wasn't viewed as a career, and also as a West African kid, the most successful sort of business people were lawyers and doctors and the glamorous things that you see on the TV. So that's the path that my mother wanted me to take, sort of. But obviously now that I sort of stuck with it, and I knew that pursuing chefing was something that I wanted to do, she supported me the whole way. And yeah, she's very, very proud, and my whole family, they're very proud of what I do. And they tell everyone, "Oh, do you know Brian is a chef?" And, a lot of people in the African community at first were the same. "Oh, okay, he's a chef. That's good. Yeah." But also, yeah, now seeing the success of what's happening, like, wow, did you know Brian is a chef? Did you know Brian is a chef? Yeah, it's really nice to see sort of taking chef as a career to the African community. When I first became a chef, I think I only knew of two of us, myself and one of my mum's friends being a chef. But now there's a few more in the African community that are actually actively pursuing chefing as a career as well. Asking for advice and where to study and things like that. So it's great to see, to sort of direct, the non-glamorous chef life as a career path in the African community as well.
I know you're doing amazing things there at Hearth, but have you thought about your own venue in the future, and what would that be if so?
Oh, absolutely. Again, when I ate at Heston's restaurant, I wrote down a goal of opening my own place and serving that style of food. This has been a goal of mine since I was 22, and that is something that I think I'm gonna actively pursue. But again, the thing is, opening a restaurant in the current situation will be a lot more difficult than sort of, continue in a company that has sort of established itself. Trying to build something from start will be very difficult, but it's still something that I'm going to actively pursue. Doing a lot of fine dining food sort of taught me to want to pursue opening a restaurant, but maybe not as glamorous as I would have liked it to be or expected to be. So if I were to open my own place or sort of move into that direction, it would be a lot more fun, casual, but not like the strict fine dining world that I would want it. But yeah, it's still a goal of mine to one day open a restaurant of my own, to sort of have your name on a place. But yeah, it's still a goal of mine, and I'll still continue to pursue it until I can't.
You mentioned how West African techniques are very much a part of what you do. Do you feel an obligation, and certainly if you did your own restaurant, to really dive into that?
I don't think maybe an obligation, but really a sort of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, sort of like an honor, a privilege to sort of showcase to the more, Western world how West African food can be refined. Not your typical just sort of casual market food, but sort of more refined West African food. I think that is something that the world needs, really. So to sort of establish African food as one of the places or one of the cuisines that can be, on the top of the world and to not be overlooked, sort of things like that. It could be the same with, sort of when Mexican food or Asian food were not as glamorous or not glamorized, to now being sort of a stop in a destination for people in the culinary world to visit and sort of take ideas and inspiration from. I think that's something that I would love to sort of be a part of, to be able to inspire other chefs to want to use those kind of techniques and food in their cooking as well.
Well, you're doing amazing things over there in WA. What do you love about what you do?
That's a good question. I think the one thing that I love the most is the diversity of cultures that we get to sort of interact with, working with people from all over the world and just sort of learning as much as possible from different cultures and sort of taking inspiration from everyone. I think that's something that I love the most. It's just constantly interacting with, with the guests, different people from all around the world, telling you stories about where they've been, where they've eaten at, where they would like to go, recommendations and things like that. Just, I think is probably, my favorite part about working in the restaurant, and especially in Hearth as well. So just different worldviews is something that I enjoy.
Well, Brian, it's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today, to hear just a part of your story, and very much looking forward to hearing more down the track. So please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. And be well.